Welcome back. This week we are going to examine two more of the uh, communication and coping strategies. This week our strategies are primarily cognitive approaches to coping. While these processes are cognitive, you will also see how they are communicative in practice. For example, we work to reframe our messages around a stressful event in accordance with our global meanings of religion and hope. You also read about how hopeful messaging can impact your physiological responses to a stressor. So we'll tap back in a little bit to that physiological aspect that we have discussed before. But these two strategies are primarily cognitive. Hopefully you were, as you were reading, able to make connections between this week's content and key concepts from past weeks. Additionally, I am going to encourage you to continue to discuss the communication approach or model that we used as we situate these two new strategies into that communication-based model of coping that we discussed in earlier weeks. So to begin, various aspects of religion are strongly related to our psychological well-being and our everyday life in general, and in the context of coping with adversity in particular. Communication scholars are interested in how religion gets translated into kind of overall well-being. And we know that religion may influence the everyday lives of individuals through their experiences, influencing their ultimate goals in life, values and attitudes, behaviors and belief systems, and things of that nature. In the context of stress and coping, religion is a meaning system that influences well-being when individuals encounter stressful situations. One model that helps clarify this effect is the meaning-making model of coping. This model distinguishes between two levels of meaning, the systems of global meaning and the appraised meaning of specific events. The global meaning includes global beliefs and global goals. Global beliefs are the basic internal cognitive structures that individuals construct about the nature of the world. These structures guide people throughout life by influencing their fundamental ways of construing reality and by structuring their kind of global goals. Global goals are defined as the basic internal representations of desired outcomes that motivate people in their lives. Here, appraised meaning of events include appraisal of events such as loss, threat, or challenge, as well as the initial kind of causal attributions explaining why the events occurred. For example, you might explain them as God's will, or you might explain them as coincidence. This helps determine the extent to which the events are kind of discrepant with one's global system of meaning and their decisions regarding what can be done to cope with the event. So let's look at an example. For example, in the face of a stressful event, in order to decrease the distress experienced, people may adjust their views of the event or revise their goals and beliefs about the world to accommodate the new information. This would involve the cognitive appraisal process that we've discussed in prior units. For example, individuals may appraise the meaning of the event. For example, they may ask, what has happened? And determine the extent to which this appraised meaning is discrepant from their global meaning system. The extent of this discrepancy, for example, the extent to which the appraised meaning violates the person's global belief systems and goals, determines the level of distress that the event causes. Here, religion is really important because it influences the appraisals and global meaning systems of many individuals. Thus, religion for some may be a critical component in the perception box of the communication-based model of coping that we discussed in week 3. As suggested earlier, because religion serves as the basis for the global beliefs and goals of many individuals, religious meaning often plays a critical role throughout the coping process, again, especially in the perception process, as we discussed in the communication-based model that was presented earlier this session. However, the impact of religion on meaning making is largely dependent on how strongly a person identifies with a particular religion or concept of faith. In other words, religion is far more likely to be used in the coping as a coping strategy for those who value religion or whose religion is highly relevant aspect of their understanding of who they are, as well as their understanding of the world around them. As opposed to those who maybe don't hold strong religious beliefs or are less devout, then the role of religion in coping would be less so. Religion is also more salient to stressors that are not easily changed or fixed. For example, non-normative stressors that we talked about before, of maybe illness or an untimely death. If the stressful event is one that is not amenable to being changed, in other words, it is not effective that we could use problem solving coping strategies to cope with this stressor, again, such as an illness or death, meaning making efforts can become much more central here, especially things like religion and hope. It is in these situations that religion may have its greatest impact because it helps restore the beliefs that the world is safe, it's predictable, it's fair, and it's controllable, and that there's perhaps a kind of benevolent God in charge of it all. It really provides some sort of direction and kind of control in a some may view as a kind of an incontrollable or uncontrollable situation. Finally, religion can influence the specific coping options available to individuals confronted with difficult situations. In addition to things like prayer, individuals frequently report using a wide variety of other religious coping strategies, including benevolent religious appraisals, punishing God reappraisals, religious forgiveness, seeking of religious support, and spiritual discontent. In this way, religious reappraisals are a major form of religious coping. So shifting gears, we can then reflect on and discuss the reading on hope and coping. Hope is somewhat related to religion, but can be very different, especially for those who maybe don't subscribe to a specific religion. They can still engage in hopeful messaging and hopeful reappraisals. So the reading on hope also established this strategy as a cognitive one that influences our primary and secondary appraisals. However, this article also examines the links between the cognitive and the physical aspects of coping. Specifically, the article examines the link between hope, which is a cognitive process, and the physiological aspects of stress experience, for example, heart rate, that may influence our overall physical well-being. Hope was defined as a future-oriented emotion that encourages behaviors that take advantage of opportunities to achieve rewards and avoid punishments. However, in this study, hopeful messages were identified as ones that cause a reappraisal of a stressor as maybe an opportunity, which would therefore decrease the physiological stress responses. Specifically, they termed these hopeful messages as hope evocation messages in the study. This article also suggested that a hope evocation message should cause the receiver to focus on the future rather than the past events. In other words, kind of avoid the rumination process that can occur when we experience a stressful event. They also argued that there is a link between hope evocation messages and the cardiovascular stress response. So here's where we're really seeing a connection between kind of the cognitive psychological perspective and the physiological perspective. Specifically, hope evocation messages should, when employed, kind of decelerate heart rate, no matter the emotional state or level of stress experience prior to kind of receiving or reading the message. That was one of their hypotheses in the study. So as individuals process relevant information from a message and they begin to encode it into short-term memory, according to the study, their heart rate should decelerate. They also argued that hopeful messages would invoke more positive emotion. So in other words, by causing the reappraisal of a stressor as an opportunity and invoking hope, a positive emotion, the hope evocation message should increase other positive emotions, such as happiness, and decrease negative emotions, such as anger, fear, guilt, and sadness. as we see, the results of this study really support these arguments. So given the results, hope could be placed in the perception box again of the communication-based model of coping. However, hope evocation messages are also an important aspect of social support and a communication strategy, thus also allowing it to fit into the coping strategies box. So hope can really kind of fit into both of those boxes depending on really what aspect of hope we're looking at, given the application of this strategy. That concludes this lecture on religion, hope, and coping. Next week, we are going to tackle social support. So I look forward to that conversation.